Session of the day. This is super exciting for me. I think obviously we all know what an iconic brand McDonald's is, so thank you so much for joining us and just bringing out the amazing content that you guys have. We have a lot to cover today, so I'd love to jump in. I am Ashley Montero and I'm with Zynga Gaming. We have over 33 million MAUs a month and we have a lot of Gen Zers playing our games. So I'd love to kind of dive in here. And before we dive into the content, I would love for Jennifer and Lukas to introduce yourselves and your role at McDonald's.
Thank you. Last session, hopefully we can keep you guys engaged and entertained. I know that's part of our role at McDonald's is when we say we're not just in hamburger business, we're in show business. That's an iconic quote from our founder, Ray Kroc. My name is Jennifer DelVecchio. I lead global brand, content, and culture at McDonald's.
Hi guys, I'm Lukas Steiniger and I'm responsible for global campaigns and brand identity at McDonald's.
Great. Well, the very first question is, what is your favorite menu item?
So, hotly debated. I used to be a Big Mac girl, but I have recently become quarter pounder with cheese, extra pickles. And I am actually I'm Canadian, and so in Canada we have poutine on the menu, which if you're not familiar is our iconic fries with gravy and cheese curds. So I can't get those here in Chicago, but that is a delicacy when I'm back home in Canada.
Love it. So mine is a quarter pounder deluxe with fries with mayonnaise, and that probably tells a little bit about my background because I'm German. With a Coke on the side, of course.
Oh, Diet Coke, always.
Awesome, love it. I am a sauce girl, so I love French fries and dipping them into sweet and sour. Love that sweet and salty combination.
There are 2 limited edition sauces available in the US right now, so
Perfect timing. Okay, well, cool. I would love, Jen, for you to set the stage for everyone on the audience on your approach to cultural leadership and how you guys look at it when it comes to Gen Z.
yeah. Well, thank you. So, I mean, we're all very familiar with McDonald's, but what you may not know is that we welcome 65 million people into 41,000 restaurants in 117 countries around the world every single day. And our little business and the iconic brand has been built through communities, individual communities, every day. But McDonald's is so much more than just a physical place where people convene over food and traditions. McDonald's is a cultural touchstone. We have meaning and authenticity in the lives of people. And it's, again, not just those physical communities, it's the chess club that meets there. It's the people that go after swim practice. It's the local firefighters at the end of the long shift. And we think about community. Community is really built by those who are in it, right? We shape the community that we're in. And increasingly, the future of community is being architected by Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And I'm sure you all can relate to this. We think about these generations, they're watching the same movies on Netflix, they're listening to the same songs on Spotify, they're following the same creators on TikTok, they're watching the same streamers on Twitch. And the more time that they're spending online, the more borderless their world becomes. And so for them, sorry, I'll go out one more. That's okay. One more. For these, that's good. For these generations, their perception of community is increasingly based on shared passions and fandoms, and less about just the physical proximity or just the physical community that surrounds them. So that's a really important starting point for us at McDonald's, how we think about the future of our audiences and cultural leadership in general.
Thank you. And obviously you guys have grown as a global marketing company in the past 2 years from 2 people to 12 people in your marketing department. With your global team working across 117 countries all over the world, how does that stack up, right? Like who is influencing who, and how do you synergize these efforts across the globe, really at scale?
I can take the one. So I already shared that I'm German. So my McDonald's career actually started at McDonald's in Germany. So in a market, I was working there for 4 years, and then I came over to the US, to the global headquarters, three and a half years ago, March 2020, special time. You have me for moving to new content, but it will work out. Back then, coming from the market, there were no such things as global campaigns to do all the things that just went through, right? The need for like a global unified approach for this brand. Everything was localized, decentralized. And you probably know that if you go, we actually just talked about menu items, right? They are localized oftentimes. So you go to another country, maybe on vacation, maybe you go to McDonald's, and you will see that like the things that we offer in those individual markets are different, right? And so was our advertising. So that dramatically changed over the course of the past two and a half years. There was new leadership coming in, new strong voices, Jen being one of them, to like transform us to a more global lens of like how we can create unified moments for this, for like there's a need for these like new generations. It doesn't mean that there's only global campaigns, like we still have a balance between what we do from the globe and what we do locally, but it's a gigantic transformative, transformational path that we were on with this company. Like, I don't know if all of you knew that McDonald's only does local marketing, but like for us, that's like a ship like McDonald's to turn it around and change these kind of things is gigantic.
Yeah, to add to that, when I joined McDonald's 2.5 years ago, I came from a decade of working at Coca-Cola. So I'd been working on a global brand in market roles and in segment roles. And when I got to McDonald's, I was very surprised to understand, as Lukas said, there were no global campaigns. The FIFA World Cup in 2018, there were 68 different campaigns for that FIFA World Cup. And I was completely blown away by that. And as when I started to get into my time at McDonald's, obviously, we all are very familiar with Happy Meal. Happy Meal, for over 40 years, has had a globally coordinated, sophisticated approach to that global brand. But there's a lot of life that we all live between our last Happy Meal we had as a kid and the first Happy Meal we have as a parent when we bring our kids back or our grandkids. And for that portion of people's lives, McDonald's was segmenting people based on day part and products. And so it was very much a product out versus consumer in type approach. And so, we thought about how do we ensure we don't just capture this generation, we also need to future-proof and think about the jeopardy, the risk of if we lose an entire generation of teenagers and young adults, how many of them are going to come back as adults to bring their kids? And so we set out to really quantify and qualify what is that opportunity with Gen Z. What's their current perception of McDonald's? How do we then help to shape and create those sustaining memories, imprinting with that generation the same way that we had when they were kids through Happy Meal? And so that really set out the foundation for how are we going to take a more global lens in the right moments, at the right times, to connect with the generation that I said earlier is increasingly living in a borderless world.
Right. And it's so rare to have such an iconic brand that it touches everyone, right, across the board. And I love the headline, McDonald's was built by the communities that we serve. McDonald's obviously is much more with digital transformation that we've seen over the past couple years, much more than just a physical space, right? Like obviously there's a lot there to unpack. So how can you give us a little bit more insight on how you frame McDonald's living in this cultural touchstone world that we're in?
Yeah, so McDonald's is of course about food, and we already talked about food today, right? But it's so much more than that. So we call that moments, memories, rituals, behaviors. Those are like what we codify as fan truth. So think about it as like a McDonald's focused version of the universal human truth, right? It's those small connections that we all have in our lives with this brand, whether you like it or not. At some point you've been to McDonald's. There's really no way that you didn't make it at least once. Maybe you didn't like it, but at least you were there, you know it, right? There's awareness for that. So these tiny little truths, like these fan truths, right? They became the starting point for all our creative work, both on the global side, but also on the local side, on the local level. Think about something as simple as the last fry on the bottom of a bag, right? Like you think like actually you're done already with it, and then you find that it wasn't the best. And if I add a little mayonnaise next to that, I'm happy anyway. And from from those small truths, we found a way to create big campaigns. Maybe you remember the Cactus Farm Flea Market campaign from December last year in the US, which was based on a fan truth about the one day one day you buy your last Happy Meal without even realizing it. This is getting sad, right? Well, yeah, right? Because you know that at some point you grow up maybe from Happy Meal and then move on and maybe you become a Big Mac girl, as Jen has been before, and then a Quarter Pounder girl. But you don't really realize at the moment, right? So on this tiny little truth, this gigantic campaign was created around the flea market. And that's the power of this approach, because it allows us to create from something extremely small, something extremely big, with always having the brand in the center. Instead of starting with universal human truth and then trying to force the brand in afterwards. So it really helped us shape our thinking around the globe to create creatives.
Wow, thank you very much. As I sit here crying as my like preteens are like, oh my god, didn't think about that. But so given today the topic, obviously reaching this next generation consumer, I'd love to talk a little bit about those trends that you're seeing on a global level, and really how are we crossing the borders with Gen Z? How are you guys as a company mobilizing against those goals and those trends?
Yeah, we see three things that are really popping and we're excited about. One is the world of anime. So anime is having a renaissance. Over a third of 6 to 34-year-olds have watched anime in the last week, and it's the fastest growing content genre in the last 2 years, over 120% increase in content produced in that genre. So that's one that's really interesting. The impact of Gen Z and the globalization of Gen Z is also having an impact on the music industry. So for the first time in a decade, hip hop is not in the top 5 genres in the Billboard charts. So you're seeing things like Latin music, you're seeing things like Afrobeats come and kind of take over. You're seeing a bit of a comeback from R&B. So we think that's also really interesting. It's really, taking music from being a monolith to music really being kind of a democratic place for fans to explore and being intentionally exploratory. And the third one that's really interesting is the future of storytelling. So we think about how we all read content on our phone every day, right? We're watching videos on Instagram on silent and reading the content. That's native behavior for all of us. It's certainly native behavior for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And so when we think about what the impact of that is in storytelling, we're seeing a lot more international films and stories coming from Bollywood, coming from Nigeria. Nollywood is having this huge surgence of storytelling coming from there. And so again, that's really democratizing the power of storytelling, all through that native behavior of we are used to reading content all the time. So reading subtitles on great entertaining television or film is now core behavior. So you can think about how do we take that from a global perspective and mobilize it. We have a lot more of a consistent foundation across some of these historical passions of music and film, where it used to be really US-led or even internationally segmented, and it's much more on like a level playing field.
Very great feedback, insight. And talking about, obviously identifying communities is one thing, but then when you're able to integrate them, we know how complex Gen Z can be, and literally authenticity is their brand name. So, Lukas, what do other brands need to keep in mind when you're thinking about where these two converge, where they intersect?
Yeah, I don't know if what we do can apply to everyone, but we define 3 criteria to basically future-proof against Gen Z in all our marketing. And the first one is culture doesn't exist in silos, right? So, whereas in the past, I think brands oftentimes developed a sports strategy and a gaming strategy and a music strategy, and saw then also the target audiences for that separately. That I'm not sure whether it was ever true, but it's definitely not true anymore today. Like all of us, we listen to music, we watch movies, right? We play games. I think this crazy number, it was like 92% of people around the world are actually gaming, and they're tiny little mobile games that you maybe do in your commute to work, whatever, even that counts, right? So there's not such thing as like the one gamer that sits in the basement anymore, right? Like things things have evolved and people do multiple things. So the interest of our audience is more diverse. And so we also need to think differently when we market to them. Like not put them in German we say in drawers, in buckets. The second one is meet or make moments. And meet a moment can mean different things. Think about a super culturally relevant topic that is super timely. That it can just be a tweet maybe that like perfectly taps into that, and then that's it, right? You participated in that conversation as a brand, and then you created relevance in that moment. It can be a bigger moment. Jim was talking about the FIFA World Cup campaign. In 2018, it was 60-something around the globe. In 2022, we actually created the first ever globally unified McDonald's FIFA World Cup campaign. So there was only one. And the impact of that, of course, can be like there's of course efficiencies, but then also the cultural impact of that can be much higher in a world that is completely connected. Make a moment can be something that actually we as a brand create. So think about Lukas' birthday. Maybe you heard about that. That's like something completely made up, right? Like no one even know when that birthday of that guy was, or whatever. There's a debate whether he's a taste bud or not. But there was a relevance in there because we saw that on social, like people really reacted positively whenever we used rumors, and then like a gigantic campaign was born from that, right? And then there was the TikTok trend. Things happen.